The rain came down in sheets that October night in Willow Creek, New Hampshire, the kind of rain that turned the old mill road into a river and made the streetlights look like they were drowning. Emily Harper stood in the doorway of the Willow Creek Public Library, her coat soaked through, watching the taillights of the last town council truck disappear around the corner. In her hand she held a single book, The Color Purple. Its pages warped from years of being read and reread. They had voted to pull it. Not just this one. 12 titles in all. The ones that made people squirm. The ones that told the truth about what it felt like to be trapped, to be hurt, to be different. Emily's thumb brushed the cracked spine. She could still see the faint brown stain on page 47 from the night she'd cried so hard she dropped her coffee. That was the night she finally left Mark. The night the book told her, in Celi's raw broken voice, that she didn't have to stay small. She locked the door, killed the lights and walked home through the storm, the book tucked inside her coat like a secret. Like armor. Because tomorrow the quiet war started for real. And Emily Harper, 48 years old, head librarian, single mom, woman who still flinched at slam doors, was done being quiet. The next morning smelled like wet leaves and wood smoke. Willow Creek woke up the way it always did. Slow, stubborn, proud of its white-steepled churches and its one traffic light that had blinked yellow since 1987. Emily walked the 6 blocks from her little blue cape on Elm Street, Ava trailing behind her with earbuds in, hood up against the drizzle. "Mom, you're doing that thing again," Ava said, kicking a soggy maple leaf. "What thing?" "The library face. Like you're carrying the whole town on your shoulders." Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Somebody has to." Ava was 15 now, all long legs and sharp elbows and the same quiet that had once been Emily's armor. She looked like her father, David's dark hair, David's kind mouth. But the worry lines between her brows were all Emily. Ever since David's car hit black ice on Route 101 4 years ago, Ava had carried grief the way other girls carried glitter phones. Quietly. Fiercely. They reached the library just as old Mrs. Abernathy was already waiting on the steps, newspaper tucked under her arm like a shield. "Morning, Em," she called. "Heard the council's got its panties in a twist again." Emily unlocked the heavy oak door. "Morning, Mrs. A. Coffee's on in 10. Inside, the library smelled like old paper, lemon pledge, and the faint ghost of cinnamon from yesterday's story time. Emily loved this place the way other people love churches. The high ceilings, the creaky floors, the way sunlight slanted through the stained glass window above the circulation desk that some long-dead donor had insisted on. She'd started here at 22, fresh out of community college, terrified of her own shadow. Mrs. Donnelly, God rest her, had taken one look at the shy girl who hid behind her hair and said, "Books don't bite, honey. People do. Stick with the books." Emily had. She powered up the ancient computers, checked the returns bin, and then did what she'd been doing every morning for 3 weeks now. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk and looked at the list. The Color Purple. The Handmaid's Tale. Genderqueer. The Hate You Give. Speak. All Boys Aren't Blue. Looking for Alaska. 12 books. 12 lives. The email from the board had been polite. Sterile. Community standards. Parental rights. Protecting young minds. But Emily knew what it really was. It was fear dressed up in cardigans and Bible verses. She closed the drawer. Lily Chun, her 23-year-old assistant, breezed in at 10 sharp, iced latte in one hand, AirPods still blasting K-pop. "Morning, boss. You see the petition? 217 signatures already. They're calling it Operation Clean Shelves." Emily didn't look up from the checkout log. "I saw." Lily lowered her voice. "You gonna fight it?" "I'm gonna do my job." Which wasn't entirely true. Her job, according to the board, was to pull the books and say nothing. Her job, according to the version of herself that had once stood on the banks of the Kentucky River with a bottle of pills in her coat pocket, was something else entirely. That version had read the bell jar in the psych ward at Concord Hospital, and realized she wasn't the only one who felt like she was drowning in a bell jar. That version had read educated and understood she could walk away from the life she was born into. That version had read The Color Purple and finally believed she deserved to take up space. So no. Emily wasn't going to do her job. She was going to do the right one. The first shot across the bow came on a Tuesday. Emily was shelving in the young adult section when she heard the front door slam hard enough to rattle the windows. She knew the footsteps before she saw the face, sharp heels, purposeful stride. Patricia Reynolds. Town councilwoman. Mother of 3. Leader of the charge. Emily, Pat said, voice syrupy sweet. We need to talk. They stood between the new releases and the local history shelf. Pat smelled like vanilla body spray and righteous anger. I drove by the display yesterday, she said. The one with the red stickers that say, frequently challenged. Cute. Real cute. But my daughter saw the hate you give on it and asked me what a police shooting was. She's 11, Emily. Emily kept her face neutral. It's a New York Times bestseller, Pat. It's on the summer reading list at the high school. Was. The principal pulled it this morning. After I showed him the petition. Pat leaned in. Look, I know you've had a rough go. We all remember David. God rest him. But this isn't about you. This is about protecting kids from things they're not ready for. Emily thought of Ava last night, curled on the couch with It Ends With Us. A book Pat would lose her mind over. Tears sliding down her cheeks as she whispered, Mom, this is us, isn't it? What happened with Dad? Emily hadn't answered. She still hadn't told Ava the whole story. Some truths were too heavy for 15. I hear you, Emily said quietly. I really do. But these books aren't the enemy, Pat. The silence is. Pat's mouth tightened. You've changed. Used to be you kept to yourself. Quiet. Respectful. Now you're stirring things. Emily smiled, small and tired. I'm just doing what Mrs. Donnelly taught me. Give people the books they need, not the ones you think they should have. Pat left without checking anything out. The door slammed again. That night, Emily sat at her kitchen table with a glass of cheap Merlot and her laptop. She opened a new document. Typed 3 words. Pages of courage. Then she closed it. She wasn't ready to be loud yet, but she was ready to be clever. She started small. Every Thursday night after closing, she hosted what she called Staff Picks After Dark. Just her, Lily, and whoever wandered in. No flyers. No Facebook event. Word of mouth only. They met in the community room with the lights low, and the ancient radiator clanking like it was auditioning for a horror movie. First week, 6 people. Second week, 14. They read passages out loud. Talked about them. No judgment. Just stories. Mr. Delgado, the retired mailman whose wife had left him for his brother, read from A Man Called Ove and cried so hard he had to step outside. 16-year-old Maya Torres, who'd been kicked out of her house in March after coming out as trans, read from All Boys Aren't Blue and said, for the first time out loud, I think I'm going to be okay. Emily never spoke much. She just listened. And every time someone left with a book tucked under their arm, one of the challenged ones, she felt something loosen in her chest. Ava started coming too. She'd sit in the back, knees pulled to her chest, and listen like the stories were oxygen. One night she read from The Perks of Being a Wallflower, another one on the list, and when she finished, the room was so quiet you could hear the rain on the roof. Afterward, walking home under the streetlights, Ava said, You know I read It Ends With Us, right? Emily's stomach dropped. Yeah. I know what happened to you. With Dad. Not everything. But enough. Ava's voice cracked. Why didn't you ever tell me the whole thing? Emily stopped under the glow of the pharmacy sign. The rain had turned to mist. Because I didn't want you to carry it. I wanted you to have a mom who was whole. Not broken pieces. Ava stepped closer. Mom, I'm not a kid. And you're not broken. You're the strongest person I know. Emily pulled her daughter into a hug right there on the sidewalk, the kind of hug that smelled like strawberry shampoo and library dust. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was surfacing. The board called an emergency meeting for November 12th. The high school auditorium was standing room only. People spilled into the hallway. Cameras from the local news. Someone had made signs. Protect our kids and books are not the enemy. Emily sat in the third row. Hands folded in her lap. Heart hammering so hard she was sure the people next to her could hear it. She wore the same gray cardigan she'd worn the day she buried David. For luck. For armor. Speaker after speaker. Pat Reynolds, voice trembling with manufactured tears. These books normalize things our children should be protected from. Rape. abuse, gender confusion, suicide. We have a duty. A man in a Patriots hoodie. I don't want my boy reading about two boys kissing. Simple as that. Then the other side. A teacher. A therapist. A grandmother who'd survived the camps and said, I read Mouse when I was 12. It didn't break me. It made me brave. Emily's name was called last. She walked to the podium on legs that felt like water. The microphone squealed. Someone coughed. She looked out at the sea of faces. Saw Ava in the back row giving her a tiny nod. Saw Lily biting her lip. Saw Mrs. Abernathy clutching her purse like a weapon. Emily cleared her throat. I'm not here to argue policy, she said. Her voice was quiet, but the room went still. I'm here to tell you a story. 20 years ago, I was married to a man who hit me. Not every day. Just enough. Just often enough that I started believing I deserved it. I lost a baby because of him. I stood on the bank of the river one night with a bottle of pills in my pocket and thought, this is how it ends. Then I read a book. The Color Purple. I read it in one night, sitting on the floor of my mother's living room while my 2-year-old daughter slept in the next room. And for the first time I heard a voice that sounded like mine. A woman who had been beaten down and still found a way to stand up. That book didn't make me leave, but it made me believe I could. Later, when my second husband, the good one, died, I read The Year of Magical Thinking. It taught me how to grieve without disappearing. When my daughter started having panic attacks in middle school, I gave her the bell jar. Not because I wanted her to be sad, but because I wanted her to know she wasn't alone in the sadness. These books you want to take away? They're not dangerous. They're lifeboats. And some of us are still in the water. She paused. The silence was so complete she could hear the furnace kick on. I'm not asking you to agree with everything in every book. I'm asking you to trust that your kids are smarter than you think. That they can read about hard things and come out the other side stronger. Because that's what stories do. They don't just entertain us. They save us. She stepped back from the microphone. For a second, nothing happened. Then someone started clapping. Slow at first. Then faster. Then the whole back half of the room was on their feet. Pat Reynolds looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. The vote was 4-3. The book stayed. With parental advisory stickers. It wasn't perfect. But it was something. Afterward, Ava ran up and threw her arms around Emily so hard they almost fell over. You did it, Mom. No, Emily said into her daughter's hair. We did it. Winter came hard that year. The kind of cold that made the library feel like the only warm place in town. Emily kept the pages of courage meetings going. They grew. 20 people some nights. They started a little lending library in the back, banned books only, signed out on the honor system. One night in January, a girl named Riley showed up. 14. Purple hair. Eyes that had seen too much. She sat in the corner and didn't speak until the very end. When everyone else had left, she walked up to Emily. I read Speak, she said. The one about the girl who stops talking after. You know. Emily nodded. I'm her, Riley whispered. Except I haven't told anyone. Not even my mom. Emily didn't hug her. She knew better. Instead, she pulled another book off the shelf, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and handed it over. This one helped me when I was your age, she said. And when I was 30. And last week, if I'm honest. Riley took it like it was made of glass. You're not alone, Emily said. Not anymore. Riley came back every week after that. So did Maya. And Mr. Delgado. And a dozen others whose names Emily would never put on a petition but whose stories she carried like treasures. In March, the snow finally melted. Crocuses pushed up through the mud on the library lawn. Ava got her driver's license. Emily started dating, tentatively, a divorced history teacher from the high school who brought her coffee and never once asked her to be smaller. One Saturday in April, Emily stood at the circulation desk watching Ava and Riley and Maya rearrange the YA section. They were laughing about something. Real laughter. The kind that made the old building feel young again. She thought about the river. About the pills. About the night she almost didn't come back. She thought about the books. And she smiled. Because the story wasn't over. It was just getting good.